How we doing? How we doing? This is Destination Denver, Colorado, and it might not be the case for people who already live here, but for those thinking about moving to Denver, I'm here to talk to you about some of the most underrated suburbs Denver, Colorado has to offer, and we're starting right now. All right, this is Destination Denver, Colorado. I'm your host, Jimmy Everton. Listen, if you're interested in learning all the ins and outs, pros and cons to moving to or around the Denver metro area and the Colorado Front Range, this is the channel for you. So that subscribe button and notification icon you see on your screen, make sure you click on that as I'm dropping new videos for you each and every week. And as much as I try to be a little creative and informative here on camera, I'm also a licensed mortgage broker covering the entire state of Colorado, teamed with some of the state's most talented realtors. And we're helping people move here each and every day. So the number and email you see on your screen, know that I am always the person answering your phone calls, answering your texts, answering your emails, there, winning if you need me. Now that we're done with that fun-filled stuff, let's get to what we're here for, and that is the most underrated suburbs in Denver, Colorado. All right, so as I mentioned in the beginning, there is going to be a difference between folks who have lived in Denver for a long time or grew up here compared to people who are thinking about moving here, aren't quite as sure about the suburbs. And that's not to say that these are a bunch of suburbs that nobody has ever heard before. I think they're just suburbs that can fall through the cracks, if you will. So we're gonna hit them pretty quick because I have several to go through today, and I don't expect you to sit here and watch me for 30 minutes as I discuss these suburbs in depth. Lord knows, on several of them I have more in-depth videos. But let's start in northwest of the Denver metro, about 15 minutes outside of Denver. You have Arvada, Colorado. Arvada has long been one of the more popular suburbs of Denver and is growing in popularity. I grew up just south of Arvada in Lakewood. We'll talk about that here in a minute. But Arvada, really well known for Old Town Arvada. That's their downtown area, ton of walkability. Some of the roads were closed down during the pandemic for foot traffic, pedestrian traffic only. Great bars, great coffee shops, just a great community feel. And you're going to see that. It's going to be highly rated for its school systems. It's going to be highly rated for outdoors. Lots of hiking trails, lots of places to get outside. Obviously, you're right on the Front Range. You can get to the Rockies quickly. You have Stanley Lake out there. Housing options. Just about anything you could want. Condos, townhomes, single family homes. Not that there really is a community here that doesn't have all three of those options, but you also have, you could be close to Old Town Arvada if you want. You could be out towards, there's some new developments out near Stanley Lake and everything in between. So Arvada has so much going for it. Also very popular for its community events, different things, most of those taking place within Old Town Arvada, but you can find some different events throughout. Light rail access. The light rail for Denver runs right through, or one of the lines I should say, runs right through the heart of Old Town Arvada. And then its proximity to Denver. Now there are areas of Arvada we jokingly call Farvada that could take an additional 15-20 minutes to get where you want to go just because you're on service roads and you're out there a bit. Not necessarily from a mileage standpoint, but just from a how fast can you drive with lights and stop signs, etc. But from the heart of Old Town Arvada, you can get to Denver in roughly 20 minutes and you can get an I-70 and be to the Front Range of the mountains in 20 minutes. So great location. Up next is Lakewood, Colorado. Yes, I'm biased. It's where I was born. It's where I was raised. It was where after 12 years, 8 in the Navy, another 4 working in broadcast journalism, I came back to. But Lakewood's next up on the list, and first and foremost, I think, for location. I don't think there is a better location for a suburb in the Denver metro area. Reason being, we have quick access to Denver. We can get to Denver in, we can get to the heart of the city in 15 to 20 minutes. We can get to the mountains, within the canyons of the Rocky Mountains, in another 15 to 20 minutes. So really the best of both worlds. I think Lakewood does a great job of catering to people who want the city life, or maybe they want the mountain life, or better yet, maybe they want both. And Lakewood's going to be known for its diverse housing options. As you get closer to Denver, you're going to be in some older neighborhoods that were built in the 50s and 60s, but again, that quick access to downtown. You get farther out, you get to communities like Green Mountain, where I was raised. Those are really suburbs, 70s, 80s built homes, really quiet neighborhoods, just kind of laid back. Not a lot of amenities. I will tell you that about the Lakewood suburbs. It's not a place where you're going to see, a ton going on, kind of some quieter. And then you get to areas like Solterra, which is on the western edge of Lakewood, really close to Morrison and C470. That's really where the new construction of Lakewood exists. There's not a lot. There's a knock on Lakewood for new homes. That's really the only place you're going to find those with, some little one-offs here and there. Lakewood's also going to be very popular for public schools, highly rated. Two of its key components. One, Lakewood is massive for green space. A lot of area. You got William F. Hayden Park. We call it Green Mountain. Thousands of acres of land, trails for hiking, mountain biking's great up there. You've got Bear Creek Lake Park, a couple, decent sized lakes. You're not taking boats out on them or anything like that. But they got a beach. I guess you could take some smaller boats. I've seen boats like, I think it's private. You get some water skiing out there. But parks everywhere. Great places to take your family, great places to enjoy the day. You've got Belmar. I think I might have said these out of order from how I had them listed, but you've got Belmar, not too far from where I live. We don't have a downtown in Lakewood. That's really more of a walking mall, shops, restaurants, movie theater, ice rink in the wintertime, that sort of thing, but a great area to spend some time in. Lakewood is also home from an economic stability standpoint to two massive employers, that being St. Anthony's Hospital. They've got a huge campus over just off of 6th Avenue in Union, and also coincidentally in that same area right there is the Federal Center. Obviously a lot of government private work there, but two massive employers there in Lakewood. Next up on the list, a bit smaller of a community than Arvada and Lakewood, which are just massive suburbs, but again, west of Denver is Wheat Ridge. Now, if I say Lakewood has one of the best locations, Wheat Ridge is gonna give it a run for its money. First and foremost, when it comes to the location of Wheat Ridge, is again, just like Lakewood, you've got the mountains to your west, you've got Denver to your east, but in between Wheat Ridge and downtown Denver are two, if not three, of the coolest neighborhoods in all of Denver. First, you hit Edgewater, just a great little town, like multiple blocks town, not huge at all, but filled with bars and restaurants, different places to go. Then you get to Sloan's Lake, which if you've watched videos about Denver, you've probably heard of. Sloan's Lake, a great park and just neighborhood right there on the western edge of Denver, still Denver proper. And then just a little farther, kind of northeast from Sloan's Lake, northeast from Sloan's Lake, you run into the Highlands. I think if Sloan's were one of my favorite neighborhoods, the Highlands is absolutely my favorite neighborhood in all of Denver. With walkability, I'm getting way off track, but it has to be mentioned because when we go back to Wheat Ridge, man, I just did one of these, folks, and I apologize for it. But I think when you're talking about Wheat Ridge, that is a key component of how cool these other areas that I mentioned are. So Wheat Ridge is really just underrated for its history. It used to be farmland, really developed following World War II. You've got a lot of that charm, a lot of that feeling to it within these neighborhoods, how the roads twist around, how the neighborhoods were constructed. It's just a very unique area. Affordability, while certainly high by a national standard, affordability, there's some great options in Wheat Ridge when you compare it to other Denver metro areas. There's also one of my favorite things about Wheat Ridge is like the quirky local businesses that are little shops, whether it's art shops, coffee shops, bakeries, but just eclectic places, thrift shops, all sorts of things. A lot of those located along 38th Avenue. That's a long stretch of road going through the heart of Wheat Ridge that'll have all sorts of things. And there are parts of Wheat Ridge that are newer, a lot of new construction, and then you'll get to parts of Wheat Ridge that kind of like Lakewood that are older, that were built in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and just kind of the different dynamics of those communities. Wheat Ridge will also be solid for outdoor activities, and you'll see a lot of new development. There's a lot of energy going on in Wheat Ridge. And by energy, I just mean a lot of positive movement in that area, a lot of ideas, a lot of changes, I think for the most part for the better. So a lot of momentum building in Wheat Ridge. Next up, we're gonna go about 20 minutes roughly north of Denver to Thornton, Colorado. So Thornton's gonna be high on the list for a lot of people for affordability. A lot of great neighborhoods. Again, every type of housing situation that you could look for, Thornton is going to have. Feedback you'll typically get from people in Thornton, my clients and friends have mimicked this, that it's family friendly, they like the schools, for the most part, I'm sure every family, there's somebody who's not going to like a school, but overall, schools get good ratings. They feel really comfortable, family friendly within the community. And it's a growing community. So there's, again, a lot of things happening in Thornton, a lot of development, a lot of different ideas, and a lot more community events occurring to bring people together. Thornton will also be popular for its proximity to DIA, a quick shot over. Not to say that any of the other communities I mentioned so far have been far from DIA, but that was one of the more common factors mentioned, was that it's really nice to be able to get over to DIA quickly. And then, as I mentioned, within Thornton, you got a lot of diverse neighborhoods, a lot of different living styles. You've got communities where the homes are on big lots and there's a lot of parks, and then you've got places that are a bit more dense, where the communities are closer together. Some of those newer developments, whereas you've also got neighborhoods that have been around for decades. And then, as I mentioned, there's a lot of development, and not just in the housing standpoint. There's future development as far as businesses moving to Thornton, some momentum in that direction. So overall, people will move to Thornton for a variety of reasons. You've got a good location. You're quickly down into Denver. You've got great affordability. A lot of people will move to Thornton for that factor, and then that family-friendly aspect. Next up, and neighboring Thornton, is Westminster, Colorado. So Westminster is going to be very popular. Similar to Thornton, it's going to be popular for location. So Westminster has a quick access over to Boulder, quick access down to Denver. You can get over to DIA, certainly not too far from the mountains, or jumping over to I-70 and getting into the Rocky Mountains there. Westminster is also going to be popular for schools. Adam 12 5-star schools, overall really high ratings between its public and private schools there in Westminster. Lots of options there. You have the Westminster Promenade, so a big shopping area, a lot of new developments there. So a lot of people, the funny thing is that you hear a lot about the Westminster Promenade from people who live outside of Westminster. You hear it from people who live in Thornton, even people who live in Broomfield, who will shoot over to Westminster to go to that area for shopping and entertainment. It is extremely popular. Outdoor spaces, a lot of parks within Westminster, not too far from Stanley Lake. Arvada is going to argue for that, but a lot going on in the open space area there. And similar to Thornton and similar to a lot of the areas we're talking about. And there's a lot of development, both from business and from residential development. A lot of things happening in Westminster, and you've got a lot of space there. So kind of looking at how to utilize that space. But I like the fact that Westminster is still holding on to a lot of their open areas, and they're keeping that in mind, keeping those parks, keeping those trails in place, because they know how important that is to communities and how popular that is for people in Colorado. Obviously, we want to get outside a lot, and most of us are not going to live in a community where there aren't amenities that make you want to get outside. With that new development, you'll see a lot of economic growth there, and you'll also see a lot of community events. Again, I think that is something that we're seeing happen more and more. Not to reflect back on Lakewood, but I think about this a lot. Growing up in Lakewood, it just didn't seem like there were that many community events. Now, I think a lot of these towns are thinking about how can we get people out and about, especially to some of these open space areas. So we're going to have this event, different concerts, different festivals, etc., to bring the community together, and you're certainly seeing that in Westminster. A couple more on the list before we wrap up. We head north and a little farther west from Denver, heading towards Boulder. We run into Lafayette, Colorado, an area that I've always enjoyed, and I got to tell you, I get more and more intrigued by Lafayette as more time goes by. I just think it is one of the coolest towns right now. Has been for a long time, but I just think there's a lot of momentum behind it. Now, certainly it will be popular for the fact that you'll have people who want to be close to Boulder, but maybe can't quite afford it, which I don't knock anybody because Boulder is pricey. Now, a lot of overflow, if you will, from Boulder will go to Louisville. Yes, we say the S here. Sorry for all my folks from Kentucky. I got buddies from there who get mad at me all the time, but a lot of them will overflow to Louisville, and now some of that is heading to Lafayette. So some of the coolest things about Lafayette, it's quaint. I'll call it a quaint downtown area. That one strip, Main Street, where again, you've got your shops, you got your bars, you got your restaurants, you have your boutique shops and different mom and pop locally owned businesses. And that's Again, if you've watched any of my videos, you know that is one of my key components to a town. I think there's just something so cool about having a little walkable downtown area. It doesn't have to be huge, just has to be there, and Lafayette absolutely checks every box for me. It also has some really tasty restaurants, because we've all been to an area where you walk through, but it really isn't that good of food. Lafayette has some great restaurants. I skipped ahead on a couple of my next ones, but number 2, we talk about affordability and that proximity to Boulder. Those are going to be key components. So a lot of people, whether they are going to commute to Denver, whether they commute to Boulder, whether they just want to be close to both, what have you, even if they need to shoot over to places like Longmont, there's going to be, there's going to be solid affordability, at least by Denver metro area standards, solid affordability. And again, that location is key for a lot of people. Reoccurring themes, outdoor activities in Lafayette, huge. You're not going to be that close to Boulder, that close to Louisville, that close to all these parks without having many of your own. Lots of open space in Lafayette, just some great farms, some great trails, quick hikes, getting over into the mountains, getting outside. Lafayette is going to be huge for that. Lafayette is also part of the Boulder Valley School District. That is one of the highest rated school districts in all of Colorado. So again, we talk about people who, and maybe they don't want to be in the heart of Boulder, they want to be close, but they're looking for good schools. This is similar to folks who might choose parts of Aurora for being under Cherry Creek School District. Same thing. A lot of people will look to Lafayette because they like the town and they love the fact that Boulder Valley School District is going to be in charge of their public schools there. And this is all part of why Lafayette has this growing popularity. It's been, it's obviously a town that's been around for a long time, but over the last handful of years, the conversation about Lafayette is growing, and it's one where it's still underrated from a standpoint that it slips below the radar in a lot of places. You'll hear about Boulder and Louisville first, but don't ignore Lafayette. And last but not least, and you're not going to be able to ignore this one for very long, and that's Erie, Colorado. So Erie is a town that when I was a little kid, and there's still a racetrack up there, just a 3/8 of a mile racetrack. Used to be dirt, now it's concrete. That part doesn't really matter, but that's all Erie was. My father would drive me up there. You go up I-25, the racetrack is right there, and there was nothing, just flat land. Now Erie is one of the fastest growing communities in all of the Denver metro area. And Erie is also one of those towns that you're about 40 minutes north of Denver, depending on traffic. I always have people debate me on this. So, if I say too long, could be up to an hour. If you have some rough traffic coming back, it can be an hour getting from Erie. But now when you get up there, there's just a ton happening. A ton of new developments, new homes, new schools, new roads, new. But within that, you still have a small town vibe to Erie. So again, it's going to check that box. Has a great little downtown area that I love walking, maybe 4 or 5 blocks, some good restaurants, some great coffee shops, the local again, locally owned business with the door open, a person inside that knows everybody in the community as they walk down the street, but growing. So it still has that small town vibe, yet that growth that you want to see in a community. I mentioned you're going to have good proximity to Boulder, good proximity to Denver, not a bad drive to DIA, so a really good location as far as Erie goes. But far enough out to where people say, hey, I don't really want to deal with Denver. I don't really want to deal with Boulder. You're certainly far enough out to where you don't feel anything that's happening in those two cities. And again, you're going to be shocked by some of the things I mentioned next, but affordability and housing. Now, price points in Erie are going up and going up quickly. It's one of the fastest growing communities that you're going to find, and new construction price points can be higher, property taxes, etc. But certainly a lot of options there. Great schools getting high ratings overall. A lot of these schools are going to be newer. It's a newer community. Obviously they need to build schools and hospitals, police stations, all of these things. So a lot of them new, but overall highly rated as well. In Erie, obviously, again, has some great outdoor areas. Coal Creek Trail, Thomas Reservoir, Erie Lake. I think the first time I made this video, I said Lake Erie. That's obviously not correct. We're a little far from that, but just some great outdoor activities. Overall, Erie is going to be huge for that. And that's kind of the reoccurring theme with all of these communities. You've got good location. You've got great neighborhoods. You got overall some really good schools. It's the type of community. In all 7 of these places that I've listed are all that I enjoy visiting, I enjoy going to. There's different amenities, different things to do. So while you may see some other suburbs pop to the top of the list when you search best places to live in Colorado or in the Denver metro, certainly don't take these for granted. And if you have questions about them or any others, that's the perfect opportunity to hit me up with a phone call, with a text, with an email, knowing that I am always the person answering those for you. This is Destination Denver, Colorado. I'm your host, Jimmy Everett. That was the most underrated suburbs in Denver, Colorado. Until I see you next time, peace.